Jade Carter walked down the quiet street, the night air cool against her skin. She had just picked up a few groceries and was heading home, unaware that trouble was lurking nearby. The dim streetlights flickered as the distant sound of sirens echoed in the background. She didn't think much of it until the flashing red and blue lights appeared behind her. A police car screeched to a stop, and two officers jumped out. "Stop right there," one of them shouted. Jade frowned but did as they said. She had no reason to run. She wasn't a criminal. She had done nothing wrong. "What's the problem, officer?" she asked calmly, keeping her hands where they could see them. The taller cop, with a rough face and cold eyes, stepped forward. His name tag read Reed. The other officer, a stocky man with a smirk, stood beside him. "We got a report of a shoplifter matching your description," Reed said, his voice sharp. Jade's eyebrows lifted in disbelief. "That's a mistake. I didn't steal anything." Reed exchanged a look with his partner, then crossed his arms. "You were seen leaving the store just minutes ago. You sure you don't want to confess now?" Jade held up the grocery bag in her hand. "I paid for everything. You can check." The second cop chuckled. "Yeah, that's what they all say." Something about the way they looked at her didn't feel right. Their eyes weren't searching for the truth. They had already decided she was guilty. She had dealt with situations like this before, but something about these men made her uneasy. They weren't just doing their job. They were hunting. "Turn around," Reed ordered, hands behind her back. Jade inhaled slowly, forcing herself to stay calm. She could fight back. She could take them both down in seconds, but she knew that would only make things worse. She had been trained to handle dangerous situations, but right now, she needed to be smart. "I didn't do anything wrong," she said firmly. Reed stepped closer, his hand moving toward his holster. "I said, turn around." Jade clenched her fists. She was not afraid, but she knew how easily things could spiral out of control. If she made one wrong move, they would have the perfect excuse to use force. She had seen it happen before. "Let's make this easy," the second cop said, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. "Unless you want things to get rough." Jade took a deep breath, then slowly turned around. She could feel her heart pounding, not in fear, but in frustration. This was not justice. This was a game to them. Cold metal snapped around her wrists, but something wasn't right. The way the second cop handled the cuffs felt too sloppy, as if he wasn't trained properly. That's when she noticed something strange. His badge didn't have a proper number. Neither did Reed's. Fake cops. Her instincts screamed at her, but she didn't react. Not yet. She needed more information. "Where are you taking me?" she asked. Reed laughed. "Oh, you'll see soon enough." The second cop pushed her toward the car, opening the back door. As she stepped in, she caught a glimpse of something in the front seat, a duffel bag half unzipped, revealing stacks of money. Jade's mind raced. These weren't just corrupt cops. They were criminals, and she had just become their next victim. She sat quietly as the car started moving. She knew one thing for sure. These men had no idea who they had just arrested. The police car moved through the dark streets, the city lights flashing through the windows. Jade Carter sat in the back seat, her hands cuffed behind her, her body still, but her mind racing. The air inside the car was tense. She could hear the low murmurs of the two men in the front seat, speaking just softly enough to keep her from hearing. They thought she was just another helpless victim. They had no idea who she really was. Jade shifted slightly, testing the tightness of the handcuffs. Too loose. A mistake on their part. A real officer would have made sure they were secure. That only confirmed what she already knew. These men weren't real cops. They were criminals, and whatever they wanted from her, it had nothing to do with justice. "So," she said, her voice calm, "are you going to tell me what this is really about?" Reed, the taller cop, glanced at her through the rearview mirror. His smirk was full of amusement. "What are you talking about? You're under arrest for shoplifting." Jade held back a scoff. "Right. And that's why you're not taking me to the station." The stocky cop, who had been quiet until now, turned around in his seat and grinned. Smart girl. Jade's jaw tightened. She had seen men like them before. Too cocky, too sure of themselves. They thought they had the upper hand. They thought she was just another woman with no way to fight back. They were dead wrong. The car took a sharp turn, heading away from the main streets. Jade's eyes flicked outside. No traffic. No witnesses. They were taking her somewhere isolated. She forced herself to stay relaxed, but inside, she was preparing. She didn't need a weapon. She was a weapon. "Listen," she said, keeping her tone steady. "I don't know who you think I am, but I promise you, you're making a mistake." Reed chuckled. "No, sweetheart, you made the mistake." The car slowed down as they approached an abandoned warehouse on the edge of the city. The headlights illuminated the rusted metal doors. Graffiti sprayed across them. Jade exhaled slowly. This was it. They were going to try something here, away from prying eyes. The stocky cop got out first, opening the back door. "Out." Jade didn't move. "You sure about this?" Reed turned in his seat, pulling out his gun and aiming it straight at her. "I wasn't asking." Jade met his eyes, unshaken. If they thought they could scare her, they were about to learn the hard way. They were dealing with the wrong woman. Jade stepped out of the car slowly, her expression unreadable. The cold night air brushed against her skin, but she barely felt it. She had faced worse conditions before. Harsh training, enemy combat, life-or-death missions. This was nothing. The stocky cop grabbed her arm roughly, shoving her forward. "Move." She could have taken him down right then. One quick strike to the throat, a sharp twist of his wrist, and he'd be on the ground before he even realized what had happened. But she held back. She needed to see what they were planning first. Reed followed closely behind, his gun still pointed at her. He didn't trust her. Smart, but not smart enough. The three of them entered the warehouse. The inside was just as abandoned as the outside. Dust-covered floors, broken windows, crates stacked in the corners. A single flickering light bulb hung from the ceiling, casting long shadows. Jade glanced around, scanning the space. She noted possible exits, weak spots in the walls, and anything that could be used as a weapon. A metal chair sat in the middle of the room. The stocky cop shoved her toward it. "Sit." Jade hesitated, then smirked. "You gonna offer me a drink first?" Reed's jaw tightened. "Funny." He nodded to his partner. The stocky cop stepped behind her, grabbing her shoulder and forcing her down into the chair. Jade let him. For now. Reed pulled a phone from his pocket and made a call. "Yeah, we got her. No, no trouble. She's quiet." He glanced at her and smirked. For now. Jade watched him carefully. Whoever he was talking to was in charge. That meant these two were just pawns in something bigger. After a few seconds, Reed hung up and put his phone away. "All right, here's what's gonna happen," he said, pacing in front of her. "You're gonna sit here and wait like a good girl. Someone important is coming to see you." Jade tilted her head. "And why's that?" The stocky cop chuckled. "Because, sweetheart, you walked into something way bigger than you." Jade leaned back slightly, testing the cuffs again. Still loose. Perfect. Reed crouched in front of her, lowering his voice. "You see, we've been watching you. You don't belong here. You're not just some woman walking home from the store. We know you're military." Jade's expression didn't change, but inside, her mind sharpened. They knew. Not everything, but enough to realize she wasn't an easy target. Reed smirked at her silence. "Yeah, we know. But here's the thing. None of that matters now. You're in our world now. And nobody is coming to save you." Jade held his gaze, her heartbeat steady. They had no idea. She didn't need saving. "You said." The two men thought they had control. They thought she was trapped, helpless, sitting there like a caged animal. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. Jade sat still, her expression unreadable, as the stocky cop leaned against a crate, watching her with amusement. Reed stood a few feet away, checking his gun, his fingers tapping against the handle like he was waiting for something or someone. She needed to act soon. The longer she waited, the more dangerous this situation would become. She had already analyzed her surroundings, planned her moves. But first, she needed to know exactly who they were working for. Jade exhaled slowly. So, who's this important person I'm supposed to meet? Reed glanced at her, smirking. Don't worry, you'll find out soon enough. The stocky cop chuckled. Yeah. And trust me, you're not gonna like it. Jade tilted her head. You two really don't know what you're doing, do you? Reed's smirk faded slightly. What's that supposed to mean? Jade shifted in the chair, her eyes locked on his. You think you caught some random woman off the street. You think I'm just sitting here, waiting to beg for my life. But you don't even realize. She leaned forward slightly, her voice calm but firm. You're already losing. The stocky cop scoffed. What are you? Before he could finish, Jade moved. Her hands, which had been secured behind her, were suddenly free. In one swift motion, she twisted to the side, grabbed the metal chair she had been sitting on, and swung it hard. The stocky cop barely had time to react before the chair crashed into his face, sending him stumbling backward with a grunt of pain. Reed reached for his gun, but Jade was faster. She lunged forward, grabbing his wrist and twisting it sharply. The gun clattered to the floor as he let out a sharp yell. Jade didn't stop. With precise, practiced movements, she drove her knee into his stomach, knocking the air out of him, then spun and delivered a powerful elbow to the side of his head. Reed collapsed to the ground, groaning in pain. The stocky cop, still dazed from the chair hit, tried to pull out his own weapon, but Jade was already there. She kicked it out of his hands and delivered a final blow, her fist connecting with his jaw, sending him crashing into the crates. Silence filled the warehouse. Jade stood over them, breathing steadily. Her heartbeat hadn't even risen. This was nothing compared to what she had been trained for. She bent down, grabbing Reed's gun and tucking it into the waistband of her jeans. Then she pulled his phone from his pocket. She scrolled through the recent calls, her eyes narrowing at the last number. Whoever was on the other end was the one calling the shots, and she was about to find out exactly who that was. But before she could dial, the sound of tires screeching outside caught her attention. A black SUV had just pulled up. More men were coming. Jade exhaled, rolling her shoulders. Good. She was just getting started. You said. Jade stood in the center of the warehouse, her body calm, her mind sharp. The two fake cops lay unconscious at her feet, but she barely spared them a glance. Outside, the black SUV's engine rumbled as the doors slammed shut. Heavy boots echoed against the pavement. More men. She checked the gun she had taken from Reed. Fully loaded. Good, but she didn't plan on using it unless she had to. Her hands were just as deadly. A deep voice called out from outside. Reed. Parker, you got her inside. Jade smirked. Not anymore. She moved quickly, positioning herself behind a stack of crates near the entrance. Footsteps grew louder as the warehouse doors creaked open. 4 men entered, all dressed in dark clothes, moving with the confidence of people who had done this before. One of them, a tall man with a thick beard, scanned the room. His eyes landed on Reed and Parker lying on the ground. His face darkened. What the? Jade struck. She moved fast, catching them off guard. She launched forward, slamming her fist into the bearded man's throat before he could react. He gasped, stumbling back, clutching his neck. The others barely had time to register what was happening before Jade spun, kicking the nearest man's legs out from under him. He crashed to the ground with a grunt. The remaining 2 pulled their guns, but Jade was already in motion. She grabbed a nearby crate and hurled it at one of them, knocking the weapon from his hands. The last man managed to aim at her, but she darted forward, grabbing his wrist and twisting it until the gun dropped. With a sharp elbow to his jaw, he crumpled to the ground. In less than 10 seconds, all 4 men were down. Jade stood over them, breathing evenly. They had expected an easy job, a helpless woman they could control. Instead, they had walked straight into a nightmare. She crouched beside the bearded man, who was still coughing from the hit to his throat. She grabbed him by the collar, lifting him slightly. "Who sent you?" she asked, her voice low and dangerous. He glared at her, his breathing heavy. "You're dead. You don't know who you're messing with." Jade smirked. "That's funny, because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're the one in trouble." She pulled the phone from her pocket, the one she had taken from Reed. Without breaking eye contact with the bearded man, she hit redial. The line rang once, twice. Then a voice answered. Deep, cold, full of authority. "Is it done?" Jade smiled, lifting the phone to her ear. "Not quite." Silence. Then the voice spoke again, slower this time. "Who is this?" Jade's grip tightened on the phone. The wrong woman to mess with. The call ended. Jade exhaled, standing up. She had their attention now. And she wasn't done yet. Jade slipped the phone into her pocket, her sharp eyes scanning the warehouse. The men around her groaned in pain, their confidence shattered. But she knew this was just the beginning. Whoever was on the other end of that call wasn't going to back down. She stepped over the unconscious bodies and moved toward the warehouse entrance. The black SUV was still parked outside, engine running. She needed information, who these men worked for, why they had targeted her, and the best way to get answers was to take the fight to them. Jade yanked open the driver's door. The keys were still in the ignition. A mistake. She slid into the seat, shutting the door quietly behind her. The scent of leather and cheap cologne filled the air. She glanced around. A duffel bag sat on the passenger seat, half-zipped. Cash. Lots of it. This wasn't just about her. This was part of something bigger. Before she could think further, her instincts flared. A shadow moved in the side mirror. Too late. The back door flew open, and a thick arm wrapped around her throat. Someone had been waiting. Jade reacted instantly, slamming her elbow into the attacker's ribs. He grunted, but his grip tightened. Big mistake. She grabbed his wrist, twisted her body, and threw him over the seat. He crashed into the dashboard with a loud thud. The man groaned, trying to get up, but Jade was already moving. She grabbed the gun from her waistband and pressed it against his forehead. "Who sent you?" she demanded. The man coughed, eyes flickering with fear. "You don't understand. You're in the middle of something you can't stop." Jade leaned in. "Watch me." His breathing was shaky. "You're marked now. They won't stop until you're dead." Jade smirked. Then they better send more men. A vibration buzzed from the phone in her pocket. Another call. She pulled it out and looked at the screen. No name. Just a number. She answered. "Talk." A deep voice filled the car. "Impressive. But it won't matter." Jade leaned back in the seat, eyes narrowing. "Who are you?" A pause. Then, in a calm, almost amused tone, the voice said, "The man who decides whether you live or die." Jade chuckled. "Well, I hate to break it to you, but I don't take orders. And I don't die easy." The voice sighed. "You should have stayed quiet. Now, you've made yourself a problem." Jade's grip on the gun tightened. "You have no idea what kind of problem I can be." The call ended. She tossed the phone onto the seat and exhaled. She wasn't just dealing with corrupt cops or small-time criminals. This was bigger. And now she was right in the middle of it. Jade shifted the car into gear, gripping the steering wheel. If they wanted a fight, they were about to get one. Jade drove through the quiet streets, her grip steady on the wheel. The city lights flickered past, but her focus was razor-sharp. Whoever she had spoken to on the phone wasn't just some gang leader or corrupt official. This was someone powerful, someone who thought they controlled everything. But they had made one mistake. They had come for the wrong woman. She glanced at the rearview mirror. No cars following. Not yet, but she knew they would come. They had already marked her. The phone she had taken from Reed vibrated again. Another call. She ignored it. She needed time to think. She pulled into a dark alley and killed the engine. For a moment, she just sat there, listening. The distant hum of the city, the occasional honk of a car, the soft rustling of the wind. Everything felt normal, but she knew better. Jade reached for the duffel bag on the passenger seat and unzipped it fully. Bundles of cash. More than just dirty money. This was payment for something big. A deal. A hit. Something planned long before she was dragged into it. She dug deeper and found a folder. Inside, a set of documents and photos. Her heart slowed as she stared at the images. It was her. Photos of her walking home, at the grocery store, sitting in a cafe. They had been watching her for weeks. Her jaw clenched. This wasn't random. They had targeted her. But why? She flipped through the documents, scanning for names, addresses, anything that could give her a lead. One name stood out. Vincent Kane. She didn't know him, but the way his name was bolded, underlined, it meant something. Maybe the man on the phone. Maybe someone higher up. Jade exhaled. She had a choice. Run. Disappear. Let this all fade away. Or hunt them down first. She didn't even have to think about it. Jade grabbed the phone, revealed the last number, and put it to her ear. It rang once, twice, then a click. The same voice, smooth and controlled. Brave or stupid? Jade smirked. Both. Silence. Then a soft chuckle. You want to know why? Jade's eyes darkened. No. I want to know where. Another pause. Then, with quiet amusement, the voice said, Good. I was hoping you'd say that. A message popped up on the phone. An address. Jade stared at it, memorizing every number, every street name. She started the car, her pulse steady. They had been hunting her. Now it was her turn.